my mic, so that sounds good. Okay, we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining in today. It's going to be the last of many live streams. In fact, if I just end the slideshow here and I just correct this right now, this is the last of all the live streams. So this is pretty much sort of the end of what I think was a pretty big release. And what I thought we'd do today is we'd have a look at the new features in Tableau Prep. There's not that much to cover. And so that's why I thought we'd do a review of all the features and round it all off today. Now, I'm also going to be taking some questions. So if you've got any questions throughout the session today, just drop them in the comments and we'll be able to go through them a little bit later on. In terms of sort of the proceedings for today, we've got a slightly different setup. We are going to obviously cover everything. I'm going to show you a little trick on how to find the best resources on what's new in the product ahead of time so that you know exactly where to find the new features, but also where to get documentation on the new features in relation to whatever product you're using, whether it's Tableau Prep, Tableau Server, or Tableau Desktop. Okay, I'm going to hop right into the browser here. Before we get started with all our live streams, we always do a little bit of a roundup of what's new, and we have some events coming up, obviously. So if you go to our events page, Let's Talk Data, you can see our events up and coming. Tomorrow we've got another Thursday trainings at 3. That's going to be a really interesting session covering, again, Tableau Desktop, Tableau Prep, and a few other bits and bobs, Alteryx as well. So it's a really great sort of session to get stuck into. And then we've got some other live streams in the future about embedded analytics. So we're trying to fill this with lots of really interesting content. Keep coming back to find out more about what we've got going on. And if you've got an idea for something, let us know. If you'd like to see a particular live stream or webinar on something in particular, give us a shout. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you is how do you find out what the latest features are and how do you find the best documentation on those particular features. And I wanted to show you how to do this from the Tableau homepage. So we're here on the Tableau homepage and I'm going to show you how I get there. Now, it's not straightforward because I've realized over time that essentially the links change and the positions of the pages change. So the best thing to do is to remember this journey rather than the specific URL. So what I normally do is I go to the support page. And once I get to the support page, I scroll on down right to the bottom where you have links for each of the Tableau products. So whatever product you're interested in, whether it's Desktop Prep or Server, this is the place to go. If today I go to Tableau Prep, it takes me to the Tableau Prep support page. And actually this page is quite good because it covers the popular topics that you're typically used to hearing about. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll keep going down, skip past all of this, there is a little section here called Manuals and Guides. And this is what you're really looking for. This is the one-stop shop for getting the right guide and the right resources for the version of Tableau Prep or Tableau Desktop that you're using. So when I select See All, we then go to another page. It's a bit of a sort of a journey. But the cool thing about this page is when you get there, it has all the products again. So you can find it pretty much by clicking any of the links. But the great thing here is you can see a drop down here for the version. And the Tableau documentation is typically written for a specific version. So you can sometimes send someone a support link and not realize it's referring to a modern way of doing the same thing compared to an older way of doing the same thing. So here there's Tableau Prep. I'll just expand this drop down and you get this little nice drop down. Now, I'm a consultant, so one of the things I actually do sometimes when I go into a client is I'll grab the PDF version of the documentation because I can't guarantee the quality of the internet connection that I always have when I go to the client. So if I just want something that I can quickly, reference very quickly, I always take the PDF. But if not, you can click on the HTML version and that takes you to the full documentation. The great resource here is What's New. So if I click on the What's New page for Tableau Prep, you get to this page, okay? And this page pretty much lists all the changes in the most recent version. So this is actually how I do like a quick acid test of what was in the beta and what was actually launched in the product. And you can see that very, very clearly here. And it goes into a lot of detail and then links you off to the detailed documentation on that particular topic. So again, it's a really, really good place to sort of go to and find out. I just realized something. I don't have my Streamlights on. So let's just resolve that a little bit. That might improve lighting a little bit more. So let's just drop that down. Cool. Okay. So here we are. We have the information about what's new in Tableau. And in Tableau Prep this time around, there was only really one big feature that kind of culminated in two two features. So the big update this year was the ability to incrementally refresh your data in Tableau Prep. And the benefit of that is that in order to do that, you need to be able to append data to tables or data sources. So you kind of got those two things: incremental updates and the ability to append data when you're running the flow. Now, the reason that's important because when you're working with databases, this is typically an activity you might want to do. Let's say I'm connecting to Salesforce, and I'm only getting maybe information every single day, and the data that comes in is the only bit of the data that needs to be processed. I wouldn't want to run my whole entire prep flow just to process the new data. And so incremental updates enable this capability. I'm going to show you how that works in Tableau Prep itself. We're going to publish it up to a Tableau server, and then I'm going to show you the real use case for incremental refreshes as well in Tableau server itself. So let's dive in. So I'm here in Tableau Prep. Tableau Prep has a very clean interface. If you have never seen Tableau Prep before, I recommend you watch some of our other videos on this topic. We've got quite a few videos already on Tableau Prep. It's a fairly new product, so a lot of people don't quite understand what it does. In summary, it's a data prep solution that's part of the Tableau family. And it doesn't work in the same way as lots of other data prep tools. What it's fundamentally doing is it's bringing the concept of visual analysis to data prep. And as I work through this, you'll hopefully start to see elements of that working through. I've got my data source here. This is just connected to the standard Superstore sales data source. And if I click on it here, you'll see that I get this pane pop up from the bottom. And this is a sort of a taste of some of the visual elements. If you're familiar with desktop, you'll already know some of this sort of interface. It's some of the same terminology and icons that we're used to seeing all along. Now, the new feature here for incremental refreshes actually needs to be enabled here in the settings. Okay, so it's one of the first things you do when you connect to your data. There's a big but there. If I click on enable, here, you'll see that it wants me to identify new rows using a specific field. So if I select a field, in this case, it's going to be new orders based on order date. I'm going to select order date. It immediately throws up an error, okay? And it says an output step is required for this flow. And so it's kind of unintuitive because when you're building the flow, you see this feature, you go click enable, you choose a field, and then it tells you that you need the output, and the output comes at the end. So it's just a small thing. If you want to enable this feature, the best thing to do is to first build your flow. So I'm going to disable that so we don't have an error, and I'm just going to add a very simple step here. Now, Tableau has several sort of visual guides here, and if I click on this plus icon, you can see them just sort of listed here, and they have their own sort of visual dictionary and behavior of how they behave, and they all do slightly different things, but these are the key sort of data prep steps that you'd expect to be using in Tableau Prep. When you click on this step, this is where you do things like calculations and basic data prep, or formatting as well, changing data types. It's all done in this particular line step here. And I can scroll across my data and I see two things. I see a tabular view here at the bottom. You can see I get a little preview of my data, but I also see some sort of chart-based preview of my data. So I can very quickly see if I'm experiencing any issues in my data or if there's any sort of gaps that need to be addressed. I can also do very quick data prep in this particular window. So let's say I wanted to clean some of the fields. Let's say, what's some of the typical data prep we do? So let's see here, country and region. That's country/region, okay. See a customer ID. Let's just see, is there any data prep we can do here ad hoc? Yeah, I think we can here. So you got CA 2016, 1000, well, that's more than 1,000, it's like 100,006 or something. Now, this can be split out using the hyphens. So if I click on these three drop down, I can go split the values. I'm going to just ask it to do an automatic split, and it will automatically analyze that field, and then it will create the splits for me, and you can see it's doing that there. And any new fields are created right here on the left. So it's split out that field that we had here before. You can see it here. In fact, I can actually move this field here to somewhere that makes a little bit more sense. We'll notice that if I drop it on the fields, it can actually merge them. So it creates a concatenation in that respect. But now I can see my information. And the cool thing here is when I click on CA, it actually shows me the specific sections of the data that are affected. So you can see here you get this visual analysis that gives you some sort of context of what's going on. Now, the next thing to note here is we're trying to basically publish this up to Tableau server. So I'm going to go ahead and add an output. And in this output step, we're going to be able to publish this data source up to Tableau Server. At the moment, the default is to save it to a file, but I'm going to change this to a Tableau data source. And when I switch to that, it's already got my Tableau Server information for our demo server at the Information Lab available. I can select a project. In this case, I'm going to select demos here. And you'll see here the data source name is already in use. So I can give it a different name, but I'm going to leave it as that because I want to write over my existing data source. Now, at the very bottom here, you'll see this ability to do a full refresh, okay? And remember earlier on when I said that the capability of doing incremental refreshes actually brings out another capability, which is the ability to append data to a table. I can either ask Tableau here to publish up a data source, and in the process of doing that, create a completely new table. In that case, it will run the whole entire flow and basically expunge the table that's already uploaded onto Tableau Server and put in a brand new one with the data that I've just run. Or I can run this data again and append it to an existing table. Okay, this might be useful if you're maybe capturing snapshots, for example, and you don't want to delete the historical performance of your data. So if I click append to table, that's what that will do. If I click create table, that will do the other step we talked about. Now that we've actually set up an output and we've done a basic cleaning step, if I go to orders and then I go to settings, I can actually then click enable on the incremental refresh, and you'll notice this time we don't get an error. Okay, I can go ahead and select my output. In this case, I've only got the output. This output here is actually named after whatever you put here. So if I just rename this here to say Tableau output, I need to be able to spell. You see here that changes the name. So this is based on the naming structure that you put there. Okay. So now I've selected the Tableau output. It now needs a little bit more information. Okay. I've also happened to somehow break this. If I just go to the alerts, the following fields in your output location have no matching fields in the flow. Flow can't append data. Correct. So I've actually set this up to append, and I don't think I've got the relevant data. To do this. So let's just finish setting this up, and then we'll be able to actually debug this a little bit. The next thing I need to do is field name in the output. Okay, so the field name in the output that I need to be checking is the order date. So basically what I'm saying here is, in my incoming data source, this is the column I'm going to use to identify fresh data, and in this case it's order date. And in my outgoing data set, which is what I need to check to make sure that I've actually got fresh data, I'm going to check the order date column. This could be a different field, but in this particular case, it's the same field. Okay, so now we've done that, I just need to click back on the canvas and let's just see what's going on here with our little output. So it's going up to demos. I might call this Tableau output, just to see if it's an issue to do with a previous version that I published before. Let's just see. This is okay. Yeah, that looks okay. That looks to have worked. So now that's all good. The error is cleared out. I think what happened there is in publishing up the old data source, I changed the structure a little bit because this particular step I didn't actually do in my previous example. So this step of splitting out the fields doesn't exist in my existing data source. So it's complaining a little bit about the table structure there. I really just need to publish it up as a new table. Okay, so there we have it. We've got the flow built out. It's set up for incremental refreshes here in the settings pane for the input, and we can go ahead and run that, and it will publish that data source up to Tableau server. In this case, it's going up to our demo Tableau server. So I'll just wait for this to run. When it finishes, it will actually open up a browser window. So I'll wait and see where it opens that. I've got two screens running, so sometimes it throws it onto a different screen. Thankfully, I opened it in the same screen. And here we are, we have a bunch of data sources available to us. So I'm just going to skip back out and go back to my flow and click done. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to publish this back up, this flow itself, to Tableau server so that I can run this flow on Tableau server itself. So I'm just going to call this, incremental and append walkthrough 2020.2 demo. And I'm going to upload the file that goes with it and just push that up. I'm going to put it into the demos project. Let's just make sure this is correct. I don't have a demos project. Okay, I'll leave it in default, and that's fine, and publish that up. Again, when this finishes, it will open up a new browser window and it will show me the flow itself. So we'll just wait for this to run. And there we have it. It's published up the incremental refresh workflow up to Tableau Server. Now, the real use case here is, if I'm using Tableau Prep on my desktop, this wouldn't make as much sense to do incremental refreshes here because it's not typically best practice to be manually running flows in a business. You sort of want to automate that so that human error is sort of removed as much as possible, but also if you want something to happen on a schedule, you might want to automate it. And so Tableau Prep has something called Tableau Prep Conductor, and that enables you to schedule flows on Tableau Server. So by publishing this flow, I can then go up here to Tableau Server, and you see that I get the option to run it. Okay, and the new option here is in 2020.2, you now get the ability to do a full refresh here or an incremental refresh. So an incremental refresh will only add new rows. So if you think about it from a Tableau Server performance perspective, maybe you've got really large data sets, it's going to run much, much faster, and it's going to be much more optimized to only run the new rows that you require rather than running the full refresh. And let's say maybe at the end of every month or maybe at the end of every year, you might then do a full refresh just to expunge the data and let that go. You could even set up a schedule to do incremental refreshes maybe every hour, and the flow would take, maybe a couple of seconds to run. And then every night when people aren't at work and the server has a bit more capacity, you can set it up to do a full refresh. This gives you sort of lots of analytical possibilities inside of Tableau Desktop itself. For example, you could play around with this feature to set up maybe an interesting sort of support desk and data set that allows you to see the incremental sort of changes throughout the day of a particular ticket. Then at the end of the day, it expunges the whole lot, and then it starts again. So that's just a simple idea of how you might use those two features in tandem, Tableau Desktop and Tableau Prep working together to generate that. Okay, so that's pretty much the feature in a nutshell. Now I have to sort of emphasize that Tableau Prep sort of lives on a different schedule to most features in Tableau. If I just go back to the What's New page, you'll notice that Tableau Prep doesn't have much in this particular release, 2020.2.1. But the reason that is because actually it's updated quite frequently. It's updated nearly every month with new features. Because it's a new product, it's got a lot of catching up to do. And so what they do is they push features out as soon as they have them available. And the versions of Tableau Prep themselves are quite good at supporting backwards compatibility as long as you're not using a feature that is required in one of the earlier versions or latest versions, okay? And so if I scroll down this list, you can actually see sort of the cadence here on the left. They release them quite often. So if I go to this section, you'll see they keep adding features pretty much every single month. And if I scroll all the way down to the very bottom of the page, it's a bit of a long page to kind of scroll through. I won't bore you with that. But you can see that they even do incremental updates. So between versions here, you see 2018.2.1.2.2.2.3. They're adding features even in these small incremental updates. You can see the list here. It's a really sort of impressive pace that they're keeping up to. So that's something to be aware of. And that's probably why this year you'll see these small feature releases from Tableau Prep. And then in the future, once it's more of a mature product, you'll then see a release cadence that matches Tableau, the rest of the Tableau platform itself. Okay, if you have any questions on Tableau Prep, it'd be great to have them now. My particular sort of favorite in Tableau Prep is actually the ability to connect directly to Salesforce. So that's actually a new feature that's been added quite recently. It enables quite a lot of things to basically to be available to us in terms of the way we work with data. In Tableau, previous versions of Tableau, what you had to do is you had to be able to connect to Salesforce in Tableau Desktop. And then the next step of that is you'd publish that up to Tableau Server as a published data source. And then you'd connect to it in Tableau Prep, because Tableau Prep can connect to server data sources. And that's how you'd work with your data in Salesforce. But here, you can just go ahead and authenticate directly with Salesforce. In this particular case, it's going to fire up a browser. I'm just going to make sure I have my Salesforce credentials available as it does that. I can't see any screen prompting me to log in. So we'll just give that a couple more minutes and then we'll see where it opens that up. If not, we'll give it another go and we'll build another section of this flow very, very quickly on the fly. We can have some authentication challenges sometimes with these products. Oh, there we go. Great. And I need to make sure I use the right credentials here. So if you just give me 1 second, I'll grab the credentials for my developer account of Salesforce. Salesforce actually give out developer copies of their platform so that you can essentially play around with it and test it and just make sure that it's the right thing for you. But also it's a great learning tool to allow you to basically work with it in a way that's sort of flexible. So here we are. I need to, okay, great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to move this outside of the live stream window because I need to enter my personal email and then enter my password. Then I'll move it back into the window. I promise I'm not cheating, as some of you might suspect. So let's just remember that. Log in, save password. Cool. Okay. Now you can see it's logged me in. I've just got a text message. I should really set up two-factor authentication on an app rather than using a text message. So let's have a look at this. So it's giving me this code 52180. Verify. There you go. Allow Tableau to access the data. Click allow, and then it will tell you that you can close the screen. And now if I go back, you'll actually see the connection is available here if it actually turns up anytime today. It's a little bit buggy today, isn't it? Tableau created this window. It's now safe to close. All right, I'll go ahead and close it for Tableau and see. There we go. I need to close the window and then the connection's available. So this is a developer instance of Salesforce. So there's nothing, private in here. But if I just go ahead and a typical table or object in Salesforce is the opportunity table. So if I just bring that in and I want to sort of connect this information to the stage information that we have, that's a typical flow you might do. You might have custom stages as well in your sales pipeline. So I can go ahead and just bring those in. In fact, I can just drop them in. And what Tableau is doing is it's actually going out to the Salesforce API. It's not connected directly to the database in Salesforce. It's using the web API in order to bring the data in. And what I can do is I can just actually, if I just create a clean step here, we can see some of the fields. It's being a little bit temperamental today, I have to be honest. This is not the kind of experience I'm used to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build ahead knowing what it will do. And I'm just going to join this to this data set. So I'm going to take the stages and I'm going to join it to the general information that we've got going on here. And when I do that, it obviously creates this nice interface. I want to take the stage from my blue item list here. So if I just take stage here, if I just type that in, eventually once this loads, we'll be actually able to see that. So stage name here. And on the right-hand side, I'm also looking for the stage. Or actually, it's probably called something else. It's probably called something else. Master label. That's my very limited Salesforce knowledge coming through there. Yeah, that's correct. So stage name and the opportunity table is related to the master label. And you can actually see here that I really love this interface for joins in Tableau Prep. It's so much more visual, so much more analytical just in that interface, and it really showcases, how everything is working, including what's matched and what's not matched. I can actually collapse this left pane here now that I don't need the connection window anymore, and you really get to see an element of, how they've made Tableau Prep a visual product, in terms of data prep. And of course, I can actually see the output of the join. I can switch over to this column view to show me the field. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the colors always mean something in Tableau Prep. For example, here, the blue fields refer to the blue step that this previously came from. And the orange fields refer to this step. So you can see here, orange and blue match to these inputs. And if I scroll down, you'll see the orange fields that are actually brought in. And you can obviously, do little things like, okay, maybe you've got duplicate fields from the join. You can get rid of these as well just by hitting X. And what it's doing is it's creating steps in the, general flow. for you to work with. So we've got our opportunities there. I've got our matching stages. I'm actually going to bring everything through in the left join. In fact, an inner join would also work here absolutely fine. Doesn't really change much. I'll go ahead and just create an output. We'll also publish this to Tableau server. And the key thing here is, of course, you can still do an incremental refresh as well on this. So, this feature is not just limited to static files or database files. It's a feature that's available in all data sources that are currently supported in Tableau Prep. I'll select publish as a data source here. I'll select the project, demos, and I'll call this SF demo. SF short for Salesforce. Salesforce 2020.2 output. Click run flow. And this could take some time, so I'm just going to leave it running. And while that runs, the reason with a fairly young product, the key thing I'd say here is if you're doing any really complex data work in Alteryx, by that I'm talking about, I should really mute my phone. I'm not having a good stream today. If you're doing any really complex data prep, you're probably better sticking it to Alteryx. Okay, and by complex, I'm talking about predictive analytics, maybe spatial analysis. You can do these things in Tableau Prep, but it's just a little bit more cumbersome. Okay, and I think someone at Tableau might say it's not. It's very easy to do these things, but just compared to Alteryx, I think it's a little bit more cumbersome in Tableau Prep. The other thing to bear in mind is that Tableau Prep is quite a young product. So talking from my own personal experience, I've had instances where certain aspects have been quite buggy, and I've had to sort of troubleshoot them a little bit before discovering that they're bugs and they're not sort of issues and challenges in my data flow. Now, that said, apart from those two things aside, for 80% of the data modeling I've ever done in Alteryx, Tableau Prep is a better tool. And the reason is I can actually see and work with my data in an interface that's much, much simpler. Personally, for me, I think the interface is much, much cleaner. You're not sort of flooded with the plethora of tools that you can sometimes get in Alteryx. And a lot of the features are sort of baked into each and every step. So I find it much, much easier to sort of work through as well. Because we're connecting to an API data source, this connection is taking a little bit of time to sort of go back and forth. So, that's a hint to certain connections maybe that use slightly different sort of data sources. But if you're connecting to a local file or a database and everything's, well optimized, it works just as well as you'd expect, and it's really, really fun to use, which I don't often say about Alteryx. I actually enjoy using Tableau Prep, but I don't necessarily always have fun using Alteryx. So that's my opinion, and that's sort of how it goes. Now, let's see what other questions here. I use Alteryx to do lots of SQL table joins and data prep. Okay, yeah. So in that request, I hope my answer sort of gives an overview of how that works for you, and make sure that everything is okay there. Okay. Okay, I think the stream dropped out briefly, ever so briefly, for some reason there. So it's good to know. Okay, we should be back. Cool. I had to restart the stream there from my end, which is, I think, hopefully helped. The quality of the connection, everything looks like it's healthy again. I honestly can't explain what's going on. Apologies. Maybe I'll blame YouTube, maybe I'll blame my setup. But what we're going to do now is we're going to sort of pivot to an FAQ. Any questions about this particular release? I'll just switch over maybe to stop sharing my screen here so that it's a little bit lighter on the live stream itself. So I wanted to very briefly talk about some of the new features and what exactly I think has gone really, really well with 2020.2, but also what could have been better. In particular, there's been specific features that I think have had a big impact on how we use Tableau, but coming up to their release, we didn't really get much pre-warning in the product about them. Most notably, I think the data modeling capabilities, whilst really, really powerful, I think drastically changed the workflow for some people in that initial step of connecting to data in Tableau. And so I think if we just look at that for 1 second, let me just bring it up here on in the browser. Where's Safari? If I just sort of show you some of the capabilities here, so if I go to the exact same page as we were before, let's go back a few pages, and if we go to Tableau Desktop, and we go to what's new in Tableau Desktop and authoring, you can see that whilst the big feature was data modeling, the way in which we connect to data has been really changed. And there's a couple of things. If you're a customer that was on Tableau Online, you will have found the transition almost very sudden, because Tableau Online itself was actually upgraded to 2020.2 prior to the release. That's typically what happens with Tableau Public and Tableau Online. So that change will have been very sudden, because you would have uploaded a workbook from, let's say, 2020.1. And then when you've gone to download the workbook after the upgrade, in some cases, that workbook is upgraded to 2020.2, where someone has made an edit through the browser. So when you make an edit in WebEdit on the server itself, the workbook gets automatically upgraded. And then when you download the workbook without realizing that the version's changed, you then get an issue if you've used some of the new functionality, or a feature that you've used has sort of changed in the background. And so it's a really sort of interesting challenge, I think, for Tableau as they go forward, about doing a much better job of making sure that features are, really onboarded really well in the product, so people don't have, really tough challenges. The other thing with the data model is that there's been a couple of challenges with performance. So depending on what kind of data sources you connect to, you're obviously going to get varying sort of levels of performance. And there is not enough literature at the moment necessarily about how this broadly impacts performance. The common understanding is that it should improve performance because of the way the relationship works and the advantages you have in not having to do things like level of detail calculations and blends and sort of weird table calcs to get things to work at the right level. However, some databases, depending on what you have in your organizations, can really vary in performance, and so it's just something to again make sure you test considerably before upgrading to 2020.2. I'd almost encourage you to maybe have an extended period of testing for 2020.2 prior to upgrading. Now, having said that, if I go to the release page, you'll notice something, which is Tableau have already released the first patch for 2020.2. So 2020.2.1 has actually been released. If I go here to, we can go to desktop, you'll see here that just a couple of days ago, actually, before the start of the month, they released the 0.1 update. And so these normally come out every month, and so you'd expect another one at the end of June. And we typically encourage customers to upgrade to the new version when that hits 2020.2.2. So the .2 patch is the version really to hop onto, because by then you've got a load of bugs that have been fixed. And if I just click onto that for Tableau Desktop alone, you'll see that they've resolved quite a number of issues. In this case, actually not that many, but if you're using this particular feature in your workbook, it can really make it sort of really painful if you're not aware that these sort of challenges exist. So just another thing to be aware of. Tableau have a really good page that shows you all known issues. So if I just search Google Tableau known issues, you get the features available there. So you just go into known issues, and you can see basically everything they're currently trying to fix in the current version. Okay, and they'll give you some sort of context. And so, some of these you'll be coming across them and not realize how fundamental they are. But you can see here, Tableau Prep has actually quite a few known issues. It's probably one of the more buggier products because, again, it's it's quite young. So it's a real sea of known issues there. But server as well and desktop as well, some of them have open issues. And as they release features, that this list is actually quite long. So it's always worth checking if the features are listed here and if they're having problems. And secondly, when they've been fixed. If they've been fixed recently, it will actually tell you when they've been fixed, or when they think they've been fixed. So that enables your teams to go in and start testing workbooks again if you have that kind of testing rigor and setup in your organization. So that's one particular sort of tangent with Tableau and the data model. In other respects, I think metrics has actually been a really incredible feature. Metrics is a simple ability. If I just Google Tableau metrics here, We just get some screenshots. I think that will be fine. Let's see what comes up. Yeah, here we go. This will do. So this is actually from Tableau's own support page. If we just go ahead to the support page, we can actually just see what it looks like. Metrics is this ability that allows users to create their own sort of pocket versions of analytics. I covered this in my previous live stream about Tableau Server, and it's a really powerful feature because it connects to workbooks and it allows people to go in and build their own sort of mini pocket forms of analytics that they can then take to their mobile devices and work with. And what's interesting here is that these could potentially grow to become something really, really powerful. I think dashboards in their own respect can be really heavy in that sense. Typically, users are just interested in a particular metric, and they're not typically interested in some of the heavy sort of dashboard content that we typically push out to them. And these might just give that breathing room in between a dashboard and in between downloading the data to Excel. These might just sit in the right place to make it easy for people to just get the number they need to know about. And if they're set up in a really smart and intelligent way, I could imagine, whole parts of the Tableau server, maybe an entire project, which just has hundreds of metrics and that people can kind of sift through. But because they understand them intimately, they can work through and select the ones that they want to see. Maybe there's a company-wide profit metric. Maybe there's a current number of shipments metric that's available on Tableau server. These kind of metrics that everyone in the organization cares about are great to have available to users so they can mix and match, put them in their favorites, and just get that information up front. They're also great assets to use in meetings because you can look at them, they're always up to date, and they're linked to a dashboard. So if you're talking about a dashboard, you can start with a metric, then go to the connected workbook in order to see them. Okay, if I keep going through the features, the other big feature that I was a really big fan of, actually, if I go to a Tableau server, some of the capabilities inside of the Tableau Catalog are actually really, really powerful. The Tableau Catalog is essentially this data set here that allows you to look at sort of subsets of your Tableau server, okay? And the way this works is it basically allows you to make an API call using a REST API to the Tableau server, and what the Tableau server can return is some information about your server. And it has this sort of really interesting architecture where you can request information in sort of really dynamic ways. So I'm using this GraphicQL interface, and essentially what this allows us to do is talk to the API without having to build something to talk to the API. So if I just search workbooks here, and you can see it pulls this list of, if I can actually spell it, it pulls this list of available sort of parameters. And if I click on workbook, you can see the kind of information that this metadata API returns. And this is what's actually powering the Tableau Catalog itself. So the Tableau Catalog is digging into this information and using it to show you some of this information. So I can, for example, build a query that goes out and queries a particular workbook, but then I can ask it to return the owner. I can ask it to return things like the upstream data source, the downstream users, all these kind of really interesting queries here. You can see here upstream data quality warnings, where a particular workbook is connected to a data source that has a data quality warning. You can build all these really rich sort of queries about the data source. And now, I don't expect everyone to be comfortable with this API, but what they have done is they've given us an interface that allows us to look at this. So if I just search for a typical data source in our organization, it's called time. If I can find it, where is it? Time. Where is time? Where's time gone? Interesting. Maybe try it with a capital T. I might be in the wrong place, which is why it's not coming up. Okay, cool. Let's hop into the main thing, and if I search it here we go. I'll go to our time data source. This basically captures all our time, and you'll see this tab here on the right hand side that says Lineage. And if I go to the Lineage, you see that I can actually see information about that particular data source. Now, if I scroll down here, you'll see I see all the fields, but on this right hand side here, I can see the fields related to this particular data source. So I can see the upstream databases that are connected, the upstream tables, but then also downstream, I can see how many flows are actually powering this particular data source, the workbooks that are connected to it, 55, dashboards and all the owners of those particular workbooks. So this gives you a really, really powerful sort of way of browsing this information. And this concept of upstream is essentially referring to everything above the asset and downstream referring to everything below. And this is constantly be getting feature updates over the last few years. In the most recent version here, they've added the ability to see workbooks and dashboards in a much richer way, essentially in the Tableau Catalog. So that's also been quite fun to see and use. If I go back to the homepage of our Tableau server, the other thing that I thought was probably an honorable mention is the ability for essentially analytical extensions to be set up on a per site basis. If you've ever worked with data science applications and you use technologies like R or Python, one limitation in the past has always been the fact that you have to essentially enable extensions or things like R and Python servers for the whole entire Tableau server. And what they did recently is they actually enable the ability to enable this on a per site basis. If I just go to what's new Tableau, go to the web page, they probably have a better explanation for this than I do. You'll see here, and if I just go to server, it's only available for Tableau Server. It's not available for Tableau Online because it's a customization capability that you wouldn't typically get. So here you have multiple analytical extensions for Tableau Server. And so what you can do here is on a per site basis, you can essentially set up an R or Python server. And fundamentally, let's say you want to test an R or Python server before deploying it to your production data sets on Tableau. You can actually set up a separate site where you can test that and connect to that in Tableau, and then once it's working, you can then transition the production database to that particular version of the software without impacting all your workbooks on live. Previously, what you would have to have done is you'd have to sort of, in a completely separate server, set up the exact same thing, but use the new version of the database. And sometimes that creates a little bit of a bottleneck because not everyone has some IT admin who can, on the drop of a call, change over the Python server on the development data Tableau server, and so this just makes it easy to do it all on the production box. Have multiple instances, and they work like they should do because they're using the production instance. When what you're testing isn't Tableau, you're testing the actual sort of data science applications that are available there. So those are my sort of top three things to look out for. Data model, be careful before you upgrade on that. I think it's something really important to understand before you do the upgrade. Metrics, I think probably the best feature out of the whole entire release. Set actions kind of maybe got an honorable mention there, but I didn't go into them because my personal view is that set actions are used too much as a user interface tool rather than an analytical tool. The most recent updates were actually explicitly about user interface. So things like drop-down filters and the ability to add and remove incrementally from a particular sheet. However, I think over time, these are going to get more and more powerful. And I think there's some exciting things to come there because they keep adding small sort of tidbits to the features and to enable us to do more. We talked about the data lineage. That is a feature that you do unfortunately have to pay a little bit extra for if you want that. It's part of the Tableau Catalog product or SKU, and that comes with a data management add-on as well. So that's also something that links to Tableau Prep and Prep Conductor. But as always, if you want to know more about that, the Tableau website is a great place to go. Reach out to us, ask us questions, and we're more than happy to help answer that as well. The last thing I talked about was analytical extensions. I only talk about this because Tableau is a great visualization tool, but it's by no means a great sort of data science tool. And so having better ways of working with data science, I think, is going to open up the possibilities and just make the workflow a little bit easier and manageable for everyday users. Okay, just looking at the questions. Had a question a while back, probably whilst the stream was dropping in and out, from Dimitri. He's discovered over the last 12 months that Tableau Prep freezes unless I space out my backup and unless you space it out, backup and it kicks as soon as the prep temp files are being created or appended. Okay, so I hear the issue here. So what Dimitri is saying is that Tableau Prep has this sort of behavior where it can get really resource hungry and essentially try and write really large sort of data sets to a temporary location. And when it tries to do this fast, I think what he's referring to is that it crashes sometimes. And I think I've seen that myself. I've seen that a lot of time. What I've learned to do is that I've learned to not treat it a bit like Alteryx. And I think that's part of the issue, is that I'm using it a bit too much like Alteryx. But there's also another sort of aspect, which is I think Tableau Prep is actually designed to be more of an assistance tool for simple data prep than really large bits of data prep. And it's difficult to know when that threshold is because it depends on the organization. But at the same time, I think there is a lot of work to be done in terms of improving the capabilities. If we just go to the Tableau known issues here, I think I closed it. So let me just search it. Here you go. If you look at the top 20 items, I think they're all Tableau Prep. And these aren't, some of these are bugs that have been there for a while, if I'm brutally honest. If I just go to, in fact, I'll keep it all so we have a context of how Tableau Prep compares to everything else. So desktop, this is an issue across desktop and Tableau Prep. That's always interesting because it shows you that some of their code base shares a commonality when the same issue appears in both pieces of software. So that's something really sort of interesting to note. Tableau Prep, connecting to Snowflake. Incorrect schema, creates a table. This is an issue probably with a new functionality. Filtering 750 more rows in a clean set sometimes resulted in an error. Yeah, so working with really large data sets is, again. So this is still an open issue. It's fundamental there. That's something that has to be sort of fixed. And what I tend to do here is actually aggregate my data a little bit, but 750 rows is a very, very small number. You'll hit that very easily if you're dealing with any sort of standard data prep work. Let's say you're connecting to sales records, you'll easily smash through 750. But again, these issues don't always happen. I've noticed it happens less on more powerful computers, I think largely because of the way they're configured. But you can see here that there's quite a few Tableau Prep issues there that are still open. And it's really, I think, a matter of time before that becomes more mature. But I think it's still a great tool to use. I'm sort of very excited and optimistic about it as well, because like I said before, I enjoy using it more than I do using Alteryx. But if I only had one tool, if I had to go into the jungle with just one tool, it would be Alteryx. That's pretty much what I'd use. Yeah, correct, Helen. I think that's a good thing. What I will say to you is if you have Tableau Prep available, definitely do use it and just try and start to learn how it works. Because I think there's something kind of interesting going on in the world of Tableau. And when Tableau Prep becomes a stable product, especially once it starts to become integrated with the rest of the Salesforce world, I think it will actually be a really, really powerful tool because there are some capabilities in the Salesforce which connect to lots of different data sources. And Tableau Prep might just become the best way of pulling in data from lots of different data sources because Salesforce as a company has all these sort of inputs already configured and already designed. And with the Salesforce and Tableau acquisition, that just might make it that much easier to connect to different data sources because that's inherently what Salesforce has been doing for quite some time. So it's just something to be aware of. But I'm not trying to put people off Tableau Prep. I'm just saying it's useful to be aware of some of the challenges that you will face, and you have to work around them. But it's definitely a good tool to sort of jump in and then start using. Okay. Any other questions on 2020.2 that people have? Now's a good time to sort of drop them in. It's the last live stream. I'm very sad. It's been a bit of a journey. I think in the current climate, it's been very interesting to sort of see the increase of live streams. And so we've kind of been learning here. You've seen the technical issues we've had, but we're getting there. We're figuring things out. A question from Amir here, Jamil. Where Tableau stands today as compared to other competitors? That's a really good question, Amir. Here's the honest truth. I don't use any other product, so I'm probably the worst person to ask, if I'm brutally honest. I can tell you why I use Tableau and I don't use any other product, and that is because most of my customers basically really struggle with all the other competitors. And I can't tell you how many times I've been to a customer who've had things like Power BI, Excel, Click, and they've really struggled to gain momentum. Okay, and when I say that, I don't say that from the perspective that, they haven't invested enough time or resources. No, no. I've seen really impressive things done in Power BI and Click, some more impressive than even Tableau itself. I'll even go as far as to say that there are some features that Power BI and Click have that aren't available today in Tableau. And those features, for some organizations, are absolute deal breakers. If we look at the data model, for example, that's new in Tableau literally this month. It's been around in Click and Power BI for a long time. But here's the thing. I've seen more business users engage and work with Tableau than I've seen in any other organization. In most instances, I come across other tools. It's typically a developer talking to the business and not necessarily the business themselves actually getting involved in building things and maintaining them. So that's the only perspective I have to share on this. I can't objectively sit here and say Tableau is the best tool because I haven't used all the tools. But if I'm going to learn one tool, like I said before, if I went into the jungle, I'd take all tricks. If I had to choose one tool, I can't really objectively say which one because I've only ever learned one tool, and that's the only tool that I'm good at, so Tableau. So I think from your perspective, if you've got a perspective of other tools, look at the market. Look and see how the same thing can be done in multiple products. And look how easy it is. That's probably my biggest hurdle. I've really struggled to learn some of the other tools. It's not that I haven't tried. I've just really struggled. And it's a really sort of tough question to ask if you don't have an honest perspective available. I'd love to see if there's anyone on stream who's used Click or Power BI for, let's say, more than 3 years and has also used Tableau for more than 3 years. What do you think? What do you think is the better tool and why? There's lots of great blog posts on this actually out there. Very well-reasoned arguments about the benefits of competitors to Tableau as well. So it's really something worth sort of bearing in mind and having a context of. Okay, thanks for the question, Amir. I hope that answer helped and was a little bit clear. If you've got any other questions, now's your chance. It's going to be my last couple of minutes of the live stream. Probably for some time, and I might do something on Google Analytics very soon. I think a lot of people connect to Google Analytics data, so we might do something with that in due course. Any other questions available in the stream? This is your last chance. Oh, Dimitri gave up on Power BI and cannot afford all tricks as an individual consultant. Great, and that's a really good point actually. Cost. You'll probably find, again, accessibility and the best tool is probably defined not just by how good they are, but just access. And I think Tableau is actually quite accessible. You've got Tableau Public for free for starters. That allows you to start to learn and play with Tableau. And that gets you over into the threshold of actually knowing if it's an investment worth making. You can also do things like join in the beta and use versions of Tableau that are up and coming as well. That's another way of getting into Tableau. It's very easy. I've tried to do the same thing with other tools, and again, I've just really struggled with that first hurdle. Maybe it's my learning style, maybe it's my learning approach. I don't know, but maybe I'll get there over time. Who knows? Who knows what will happen to Tableau? I'll maybe have to learn another tool if it doesn't do so well now it's been acquired by Salesforce. Okay, it's 5 o'clock at my end, so I'm going to bring the stream to a close. Thank you so much for being patient with me today during the stream. It's really sort of an interesting process. It's been incredible sort of just learning how to do it as well. Today, you see, I've got a slightly new setup where I'm cut out in front of the screen. And I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been a useful setup. I'm going to keep trying to evolve this and make it more engaging and see how it works. We've got one more question from Clara. Tableau Prep version compatibility with server. So version compatibility with Tableau Prep is slightly different to desktop. As long as you haven't used a feature in Tableau Prep that is from a newer version, it performs fairly well. As soon as I use a feature that's in a new version, I can't easily downgrade the Tableau Prep workflow. And it's not even like Tableau Desktop where you can do some XML hacking. There is no XML hacking with Tableau Prep. So what I'd encourage you to do is use it carefully, and before you upgrade, make sure that you're staying in sync with your Tableau server. And then you can use all the great features that are available to you. Okay, this is it. Thank you guys. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you for everyone who's saying thanks. It's incredible to have you all join every single week. I've seen a couple of faces come up and again. I'm going to be doing more live streams in the future. I really enjoy this format. I can't write content to save my life. So this is just so much easier. Just showing you how it works is a much more engaging way, I think, than writing content. So maybe that's what I'll do more of in the future. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you, and I'll catch you next week.